Somewhere in Texas tonight, a farmer is sitting on his porch in the dark. He has a rifle across his lap, a thermal scope, a radio connected to a neighbor 2 miles away doing the same thing. ASMO-activated cameras covering 6 entry points on his property. He has spent $14,000 this year alone on fencing, trapping, equipment, and ammunition. He called a helicopter company last month and booked a 2-hour aerial hunting session for $4,000. And this morning, when he walked his fields at dawn, the hogs had been back anyway. 30 acres of corn, rooted up overnight. Destroyed, not eaten cleanly. Destroyed, because a feral hog does not graze. It roots, it tears. It flips the soil with its snout, shredding root systems, exposing seeds, collapsing irrigation lines, and leaving behind a field that looks like it was hit by a rototiller, operated by something that hates farming. This is happening across 253 of Texas's 254 counties. Every single county in the state except one. Right now, every night. Texas has a feral hog problem that has crossed every threshold at which a problem becomes a crisis, and crossed every threshold at which a crisis becomes something that does not have a name yet. 2.9 million feral hogs in one state, causing an estimated $871 million in agricultural damage in Texas alone every single year. Nationally, across 13 states, $1.6 billion in a single year. Spreading diseases that could, in a worst-case scenario, reintroduce foot-and-mouth disease to American livestock and cause up to $21 billion in damage to the U.S. agricultural industry. Hunters kill approximately 40,000 to 51,000 hogs per year in Texas. The hogs reproduce fast enough to replace every single one of them and still grow the population. To hold the hog population steady, not reduce it, just stop it from growing wildlife. Officials estimate that 75% of Texas's entire feral hog population would need to be eliminated every single year. That is 2.1 million hogs every year, just to break even. Nobody is close to breaking even. This is the Texas feral hog war. It has been going on for decades. It involves helicopters, machine guns, poison bait stations, thermal drones, GPS Dragard traps controlled by smartphone apps, and trained hunting dogs that can catch 4 hogs a day before collapsing from exhaustion. It has created a multi-million-dollar industry of hog hunting tourism, professional trappers, and aerial depredation companies. It has spawned legislation, federal programs, university research centers, and county offices that do nothing else but manage pigs. And the hogs are still winning. To understand how Texas ended up with 2.9 million feral hogs, and no clear way to stop them, you need to go back 500 years. Pigs are not native to North America. There were no pigs here before Europeans arrived. The species arrived in 2 waves, and understanding both waves is essential to understanding what Texas is dealing with today. The first wave came with Christopher Columbus in 1493. Domestic pigs, Suscrofa domesticus, were carried on exploration ships as a portable, self-reproducing food supply. They were released on Caribbean islands to establish breeding populations that future expeditions could harvest. In 1539, Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto landed on the Florida coast with a herd of domestic pigs that historians believe numbered around 13 animals. As de Soto's expedition moved inland across what would become the American Southeast, pigs escaped, were abandoned, or were traded with Native American communities. Those 13 pigs became the ancestors of the feral hog populations that still inhabit the American South today. For 3 centuries, feral pig populations existed, but remained relatively limited. Free-range farming practices where domestic pigs were allowed to roam unsupervised across large areas allowed the populations to grow and intermingle with escaped animals. But natural predators, including wolves, mountain lions, and bears, kept them in check. Then came the second wave. In the early 20th century, Eurasian wild boar, Suscrofa, a different subspecies from the original European domestic pig but closely related, were deliberately imported from Europe and released in game preserves across the southern United States for recreational hunting. They were larger than the existing feral pigs. They were faster. They were more aggressive. And crucially, they interbred with the existing feral domestic pig populations, producing hybrids that combined the size and aggression of the wild boar with the adaptability and reproductive capacity of domestic pigs. The result is what Texas now calls the feral hog. Not quite a domestic pig, not quite a wild boar. Something that has inherited the worst qualities of both, from the perspective of any human being trying to get rid of them. Then the wolves were killed. Then the mountain lions were nearly extirpated from East Texas. Then the bears disappeared. And the feral hog, freed from every predator that had kept it in check for centuries, did what invasive species always do when their natural controls are removed. It multiplies. A female feral hog reaches sexual maturity at 6 months old. 6 months. The gestation period is 115 days. A single female can produce 2 litters per year, with an average of 5 to 6 piglets per litter. Under ideal conditions, which the Texas landscape, with its abundant food, water, cover, and absence of predators, largely provides a single breeding pair, can theoretically produce a population of 132 animals in 18 months. 132. From 2 in 18 months. The feral hog population in the United States grew from 2.4 million animals in 1982 to an estimated 6.9 million in 2016. From 18 states to 35 states in the same period. The rate of northward range expansion accelerated from approximately 4 miles per year to 7.8 miles per year between 1982 and 2012. They are moving north into states that have never had them before, at a rate that wildlife managers describe as alarming. In Texas alone, the population has been estimated at between 2.6 and 2.9 million animals. As of 2024, they have been documented in 253 of Texas's 254 counties. El Paso County in the far west of the state on the New Mexico border is the only county that has not reported a sighting. Every other county in Texas has feral hogs. And here's the number that explains why every method of control has failed to make a dent. To hold the Texas feral hog population at its current level, not reduce it, just prevent it from growing further. Wildlife officials estimate that 75% of the entire population must be removed every single year. That is approximately 2.1 million animals every year, continuously, without stopping, just to achieve a standstill. Texas hunters killed approximately 40,000 to 51,000 feral hogs in recent years. Aerial operations, trapping, and all other control methods combined remove additional tens of thousands. The total removal effort, across all methods, reaches perhaps a few 100,000 animals per year. The hogs produce more than that in a good breeding season. This is not a pest control problem. It is a mathematical problem. The reproductive rate of the animal exceeds the removal capacity of every tool that has been deployed against it. The damage they cause is not merely agricultural. It is total. A single sounder, the term for a group of feral hogs, typically consisting of 1 or 2 adult females and their offspring, can destroy a field of corn in a single night. Not because they eat all of it, because they root. A feral hog uses its snout like a plow, turning soil to depths of 3 feet in search of roots, tubers, grubs, and anything else edible beneath the surface. A field that took a farmer months to plant can be made unharvestable in hours. The rooting does not just destroy the visible crop, it collapses the root systems of surviving plants, disrupts irrigation infrastructure, compacts some soil layers while aerating others in ways that damage future growing conditions, and leaves behind a surface so disturbed that replanting requires extensive remediation. Texas A&M University and the National Wildlife Research Center estimate that feral hogs cause $500 million in damage per year in Texas. The American Farm Bureau Federation's most recent comprehensive assessment, released in 2024 and covering 11 states surveyed in 2022, put the total damage across 13 states at $1.6 billion for a single year. Texas accounts for $871 million of that total, more than half the national damage figure from a single state. 73% of Texas crop producers surveyed reported feral hog presence on their farms. The majority said the population on their land had substantially increased over the past 3 years. But agriculture is only part of the damaged catalog. Feral hogs destroy native vegetation by rooting and wallowing, creating muddy depressions in wetland areas that alter hydrology, kill native plants, and provide breeding habitat for mosquitoes. They outcompete native wildlife for food resources, directly threatening several endangered species that share their habitat. Their wallowing in streams and rivers introduces fecal bacteria at concentrations that have been documented to make water unsafe for human recreation and to damaged aquatic ecosystems downstream. Studies have shown that a single sounder of feral hogs can contaminate a stretch of creek so severely that E. coli levels exceed safe drinking water standards for miles in either direction. They spread disease. Swinebrucellosis, transmissible to humans through direct contact with infected tissue or blood, has been documented in Texas feral hog populations. Pseudorabes, which is fatal to dogs, cats, and many livestock species. And most alarmingly, feral hogs represent a potential reservoir for two diseases that have been eradicated from the domestic American pig population, but that could be catastrophically reintroduced if wild hogs contracted them. Classic swine fever and foot-and-mouth disease. Wildlife researchers have calculated that if disease were reintroduced to the domestic livestock industry through feral hogs, the resulting damage to American agriculture could reach $21 billion, enough to eliminate the livelihoods of a significant portion of small and mid-sized American farms. And in 2025, a new threat emerged. New World screwworm, a parasitic fly whose larvae burrow into the living flesh of warm-blooded animals, causing fatal infections in livestock, was detected in Mexico and Central America. Moving northward toward the Texas border, feral hogs, which frequently travel across property lines and jurisdictions, and which have no natural containment, are considered a primary vector risk for screwworm transmission into the United States. A species that was already costing Texas nearly $1 billion a year in damage is now a potential delivery mechanism for a disease that could devastate the American cattle industry. Texas has tried everything. Ground hunting is the oldest method. Texas is one of the few states where no hunting license is required to kill feral hogs on private land. As long as the landowner has given permission, hunting can happen year by any legal means, with any weapon, at any time of day or night. The state actively encourages hog hunting, not as a sport, but as a pest control measure. Some counties run bounty programs where hunters can bring in frozen hog tails on the third Tuesday of each month and receive a payment per tail. Teenagers show up. Ranchers show up. Hunters who drove 3 hours to participate show up with bags of tails. In one of the most aggressive county-level programs in the region around the Canadian River in the northern Panhandle, a coordinated combination of trapping, hunting, and aerial operations removed 78% of the local wild hog population over several years. 78%. In one of the most successful local eradication efforts in the state, the population recovered. Trapping is considered one of the most effective tools for removing larger numbers of hogs at once, because a large corral trap can capture an entire sounder simultaneously rather than individual animals. Modern traps have evolved significantly. GPS-connected corral systems with cameras and automatic gates that a landowner can trigger from a smartphone when the entire sounder is inside, rather than having to be physically present. Texas Wildlife Services helped an Irving neighborhood install camera-equipped, corn-baited corral traps that could be remotely triggered. The technology works. The problem is scale. There are 2.9 million hogs, and not enough trappers, not enough traps, and not enough landowners with the time and resources to run them effectively. Aerial hunting is the most dramatic and, in some circumstances, the most effective tool available. Companies like Hellebucken in Bryan, Texas, offer what they describe, without irony, as helicopter hog depredation operations. 2-hour flights, in which paying customers sit in a helicopter and shoot feral hogs below with semi-automatic weapons. Packages start at $4,000. The pilot finds the hogs. The customer shoots. The company has permission to operate across approximately 400,000 acres of farmland in the Bryan area, contributed by ranchers and farmers who want the hogs removed. A hunting license is not required. Sitting out of a multi-million-dollar helicopter and you're shooting a machine gun at the same time. The company's spokesperson told NBC News the experience attracts customers who have never fired a gun before. It also, by the company's own account, makes a meaningful dent in local hog populations, while acknowledging that one aerial hunting company operating over 400,000 acres of a state covering more than 170 million acres is not a statewide solution. In 2021, the USDA approved the use of a sodium nitrite poison bait, marketed under the name Kaput, feral hog lure in some states. Texas approved and then suspended its use, pending further review of risks to non-target species, particularly scavengers that might consume poisoned hog carcasses. The poison question remains live and contested. Hog hunters, who eat the meat and who use trained dogs that could be harmed by coming into contact with poisoned hogs, have strongly opposed broad poison deployment. The debate continues. Trained hunting dogs can track individual hogs through dense vegetation and catch animals that avoid every other method. But a study found that dogs can only catch approximately 4 hogs per day before becoming too exhausted to continue hunting. 4 hogs per day, from a population of 2.9 million animals, represents a removal rate so small it is statistically invisible. Research into fertility control, the use of immunocontraception vaccines, to prevent female hogs from reproducing, has been ongoing for years. It faces the same fundamental challenge that every population-level control method faces. You have to get the treatment into 2.9 million animals, most of which are nocturnal, intelligent, and increasingly wary of humans and human-placed devices after generations of being hunted. The hogs learn. This is perhaps the most alarming quality of an already alarming animal. Feral hogs demonstrate behavioral plasticity that researchers describe as remarkable for When trapping pressure increases in an area, sounders relocate. When hunting pressure increases at night, hogs shift to daytime activity. When corral traps are placed in familiar areas, dominant females, which scientists have identified as the intelligence centers of sounder social groups, refuse to enter them. Even we'd bite and teach younger animals to avoid them. Sounders that have been hunted from helicopters learn to move under tree cover when they hear rotor noise. The animal that is trying to trap you is also, in a meaningful sense, trying to trap you back. There are people who have decided to profit from the problem. The feral hog crisis has created an entire ecosystem of industries that did not exist 30 years ago. Aerial hunting tourism, professional trapping companies, high-tech trap manufacturers, thermal drone operators, wildlife damage consultants, county hog management offices, university extension programs devoted entirely to swine depredation research. A company in Bryan offers the helicopter hunting experience as the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar business. Ranchers who once paid professionals to remove hogs now charge those same professionals access fees because the right to hunt hogs on productive land has become a commodity. Meanwhile, the federal feral swine control program, a proven, landowner-supported federal initiative that had demonstrated measurable population reductions in participating areas, was excluded from the 2024 Farm Bill extension because it lacked permanent baseline funding. It was a temporary program that had worked. Congress let it lapse anyway, while the House included funding for it in a separate reconciliation package that the Senate had not yet taken up. The program that was working lost its funding. The hogs kept breeding. Here's where things stand. Texas has 2.9 million feral hogs. They cause $871 million in damage every year in the state alone. They are present in 253 of 254 Texas counties. They are spreading northward at nearly 8 miles per year into states that have never had them. They carry diseases that could cost $21 billion in livestock damage if introduced to domestic populations. They are now a potential vector for every control method currently deployed: hunting, trapping, aerial operations. Poison removes fewer animals per year than the population produces. The math does not work. Wildlife researchers are direct about this. The only scenario in which feral hog populations could be meaningfully reduced across a large landscape is a coordinated, sustained, landscape-scale intervention, something that requires federal funding, insurgency, cooperation, landowner participation across millions of acres, and a multi-decade commitment to removal rates that currently do not exist. The piecemeal approach, county programs here, aerial hunting there, trapping where a landowner can afford it, has failed to make a population-level dent for 30 years. In some counties, coordinated programs have achieved local success. The 78% removal in the Canadian River region is real, but the hogs from surrounding areas move in. The population recovers. The work starts again. This is the Sisyphean reality of the Texas feral hog war. You push the boulder up the hill, it comes back down. You push it up again, it comes back down faster, because the hogs you did not kill bred while you were pushing. The parallels to other ecological disasters in this series are not accidental. Australia introduced 24 rabbits to its continent in 1859. By the 1920s, there were 10 billion of them, and the government was building a fence across an entire state. Australia introduced 102 cane toads to control beetles in 1935. There are now 200 million cane toads and they have killed enough native wildlife to alter ecosystems across northern Australia. Colombia left for hippos in a river basin in 1993. There are now 200 of them, and the government is trying to determine whether surgical sterilization is feasible before the population becomes impossible to manage. Texas introduced Eurasian wild boar for recreational hunting in the early 20th century. Domestic pigs escaped from farms across 100 years of settlement. The two populations hybridized, the predators were killed. And now there are 2.9 million animals that cause nearly $1 billion in damage every year. That science cannot remove fast enough, and that the government cannot fund the removal of consistently enough. The lesson is always the same. You introduce a species without understanding its reproductive capacity. You remove its natural controls. You allow the problem to grow for decades before responding at scale. And then you discover that the gap between the rate of reproduction and the rate of removal is a gap you cannot close with the tools you have available and the resources you are willing to commit. Pablo Escobar's hippos multiplied from 4 to 200 in 30 years. Texas's feral hogs multiplied from a manageable problem to 2.9 million animals in roughly the same time frame. The timeline is identical. The mechanism is identical. The outcome, an invasive population that has outrun every attempt to control it, is identical. The only difference is that hippos are slower. Tonight, somewhere in Texas, a feral hog sounder is moving through a cornfield. The dominant female stops at the edge. She has been here before. She remembers the trap that appeared last spring, the corral, the corn bait, the smell of humans on the metal. She remembers the helicopter sound from 2 months ago and the way the hogs that did not move into the trees did not come back. She stands at the edge of the field for 30 seconds. Then she leads the sounder in. By morning, 30 acres are gone. The farmer will file the damage report. He will call the helicopter company. He will check the camera feeds on his smartphone. It will reload. And somewhere in the brush, a female hog that is 6 months old is already pregnant with her first litter. The war is not over. It has not even reached its worst point yet. If this story shocked you, if you had no idea that there were 2.9 million feral hogs in Texas, causing nearly $1 billion in damage every year, that hunters cannot kill them fast enough, that the hogs are learning, adapting, and spreading northward, share this video, because this is happening right now. In the most agriculturally productive state in America. And most people who eat food grown in Texas have never thought about the war being fought on the land that grew it. What do you think? Is there a solution that Texas hasn't tried yet? Should the federal government treat this as a national emergency? Or is this simply the cost of 500 years of introducing animals where they don't belong? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe, because the next story is always stranger and more important than the one before it.